Did you know that we have ground radars for fixed-wing aircraft? Well, not so fixed in the case of the Su-24, but jets, right? In 3 jets in the game, we have ground radars. So today I wanted to show to you guys how to use them and basically how they work a bit, right? Although we do have the possibilities of other aircraft in the future to have these ground radars, and to be honest, we already have them in many helicopters as well. I found it funny that the only aircraft that have ground radars right now are technically Russian/Soviet aircraft, right? The thing is that in the other side of things, like in the NATO side of things and stuff like that, we can have ground radars in the future. The thing is, I don't think we have any aircraft right now that could actually have one. Even the F-16C needs an upgrade on its radar to actually be able to do that, and even then I'm pretty sure it's a different type of radar. I could be wrong. You let me know in the comments if I forgot any aircraft that can have a ground radar like that, but most of them could actually have a radar just to make sure that they don't crash in anything, right? So the A7, if I'm not mistaken, is like that, or at least something along those lines, right? And of course we have aircraft like the Tornado that should have a ground radar as well, but in the terms of like that, it's not supposed to be crashing, right? That's what I think we have in the game. That it's technically correct, the only 3 aircraft, but you let me know. You let me know if there's too many of them. I can even make a video talking about them. I do know that the SMT and the Yak-141 technically could have ground modes as well, and they don't have, but they're also Russian aircraft as well. So let's get going. Let's start to talk about the aircraft that we have. The first one is the Su-24, guys. The Su-24 has the Orion radar, which is not the greatest radar ever, but it is indeed a very good one to ground targets. It has basically 2 radars. It's very similar to the Tornado radar on that regard. You have basically an anti-collision radar to flying low, and automatic autopilots to actually be able to fly with, you know, hands off the stick, very low, you know. And of course it has the proper ground radar to find targets. This radar in real life is more used to finding naval targets and stuff like that, but you know how it is. And in the game you can even detect small targets with it, but in real life it was made to detect larger targets from a very far distance. You could even go to up to like 150 kilometers if it was an aircraft carrier or a very large target, right? You can even track like large you know, bombing targets like a train station or a specific building, anything with that, because it basically just detects targets that are, you know, bouncing back the radiation from the ground, right? Which is pretty interesting, but in the game it works in a weird way. Let me show to you. So in the game, here we are, we have a search GMTI mode, which it's kind of weird because if it's a ground moving target indication, it means that it would only detect targets that are moving. But this radar, just like in real life, it works in a little bit of a different way than normal MTIs. So basically detects targets that are large enough to actually make the radar notice that it's a target. In real life, it would be large targets like ships and big structures, but in the game, as you see right there, we can detect stationary tanks that are very small, and even moving tanks if you point the antenna to those moving targets right there, right? You can also detect ships. So while we go there, I will explain to you guys. So the commands that you have here are very limited. You don't have an air-to-air mode. You only have a gimbal limit upwards and downwards, as you see, so you can change it up there, and you are detecting the tanks there, right? But you cannot have any other modes. You don't have more range on the scale or anything else. You can turn it off and turn it on and basically just change the antenna upwards and downwards. You cannot lock a target or do anything. You're just detecting the target on where they are. As you see, ships are very easy to detect. Even if they're moving or not, you will be able to detect them very easily. But again, tanks as well, everything basically. It detects every single type of target that is on the ground, which is kind of weird. Again, it's not really realistic because in real life, this radar only detects really big targets, and it's a very it's made to attack ships basically, but also large like concentrations of buildings and stuff. So in real life, you would be able to identify that there are 3 buildings there, or where the buildings are basically, right, or where a mountain is or something like that, and it would be able to, the pilot would interpret that and be able to actually deploy the weapons. Okay, that's how it is on the Su-24. So it is a very, very limited radar, but you can use it to a good effect if you are careful enough and you are smart enough about it. See, I mean, to detect small targets like that, you only have like 12 kilometers of detection. Those boats there, it detected around 10 kilometers. The bigger ones you can see from further away, but it's still not that far away. Okay, so let's go to the next 2. Then we have the Copio-25 radar, guys. This is the radar that is used on the Su-39. This radar does have ground modes, and in real life it is made also for larger targets, but it is a much more modern radar. In real life, you can actually detect group of tanks from up to 20 kilometers. It can detect a missile boat from up to 80 kilometers, a bridge or something like a large structure like that at up to 100 kilometers, and a large ship like a carrier for more than 200 kilometers. So it's a much more compact radar, but at the same time, much better. It can also, in real life, have different usages like ground mapping of structures and of columns of tanks and everything with that. It can map the ground in an area, and with that it can give the pilot the actual picture with zoom and everything that you can actually have intel about. You can share that intel with ground units, so it's a very, very, very interesting radar. But in the game is a much different story. In the game, it's a much more limited radar. So as you see on the right side there, the radar is able to be gimbaled to the sides. You can gimbal upwards and downwards, and you have 2 modes. You have the search GMTI and you have TWS GMTI. So it's pretty much the same as the air targets, but of course with ground units. You don't have the ability to change the distance of the target, so it's based on 20 kilometers, and you can change the basically the scan zone to be faster and have a small unit there. Okay, so again, we have the normal search and the TWS. How do they detect targets? Well, that's where it's really different from the Su-24, because this type of radar does not detect a standing still target. That's where it's the limitation out of this. So as you see right there, you cannot detect any targets that are not moving. I don't see anything. See, there are targets on my 12 o'clock there, and even in the other mode over here, it just doesn't detect anything. Okay, that's the bad part about this radar. The good part is that if you do find a moving target, as you see right there, they're being detected, right? If I change to TWS, it's a little bit easier to use. I can actually lock them up. It's kind of hard to do the lock sometimes, but you can lock them up and find them very quickly, and you can even just fire the missile on wherever they are, right? So it's a way of just finding targets in a ground battle. Of course, here there's a problem that there's a lot of trees. But when there is none, you can basically just lock a target, and then it will automatically lock the the little camera on the nose there to actually be able to designate a target with a laser designator, for example, or a TV designator for the missile, and be able to use that to actually just find a target very quickly without having to look, without having to use any thermal systems or anything like that, and fire a missile very quickly. The only problem is that you cannot fire on targets that are not moving. So again, it locked it up. I can just fire the missile and it will go to the target. Okay, so It's a very, very good radar when the target is moving, but a very bad one when the target is not moving. So how useful this is in a realistic ground battle, it depends on how you use, okay? So you gotta be careful. And the last aircraft that we're gonna talk about with the third radar is another Russian aircraft, but in the UK tech tree. Yes, the MiG-21 Bison. It does have a version of the Copio radar to be used on the MiG-21. So it's the Copio 21, while the Su-39 uses the 25 version out of it. The radar itself is very, very similar to each other. You know, there's minor differences here and there, but to be like in real life, right? But in the game, it's pretty much the same. So how it works is pretty much the same. So as you see, TWS GMTI, you can change it up to the search GMTI as well. You can change the size of the scan zone, the gimbal to the sides and upwards and downwards, but you cannot see any non-moving target. So these ships, for example, they're not moving. So I'm not able to detect them, as you see. But those ships right there, they are moving. So these ones, you don't detect them, see? But those ones, you detect them because they are moving. And you can lock them up. So I just have to I prefer to use TWS. It's a little bit easier to lock. Hold up. Come on, baby. Yeah, it's not able to lock this thing properly. Yeah, it's just losing the lock. But you get the idea, right? You can basically just lock them up, and with that you can find targets very quickly, even at a far distance. For example, here, if I point my nose to those targets, there are non-moving targets there and moving targets. So if I just point to there, it will eventually find a target that it's moving enough for the radar to pick up. As you see, it doesn't detect any air targets. See, it needs to be in range. See, I detected a target right there. It's moving too much. It's a little bit hard to actually get a lock sometimes, especially when it's moving in the middle of stuff. But yeah, there you go. So I locked one of the targets there, and it's looking down on it, right? It's pretty much the same system as the Su-39, okay? And these are it, guys. These are the ground radars that we have in the game. Kind of useless, maybe, but at the same time, they are very, very cool to use just because they are fun, you know. So it depends very much on how you actually want to use them. If you, especially the Su-24, can find targets, you know, you can look into a place where there is nothing there of a friendly type, and you can look there and find targets very easily. And at the same time, the MiG-21 and Su-39 can be used to actually find targets very quickly, because you can just point your nose to them and find a target very quickly, get a lock, and fire a missile very quickly. So they're useful. It's just that they have a very specific usage, and by no means this is how these radars work in real life, okay? But it is a start. Hopefully we get more of these aircraft, more of these radars, because the more we get it, the more realistic the game becomes. But yeah, guys, I hope you enjoyed. Make sure to subscribe, click the like button, and I see you guys on the next one. Bye, guys. See you.